Welcome everyone to this edition of the Red Raider Report. Today we're going to look at the predictions for the Big 12 North and South divisions and where I think they'll finish. But first up, the USA Today Coaches Poll was released for the first time today. Not surprisingly, the number one team in the land, the Florida Gators. They are the defending national champions and have Tim Tebow back. Let's take a look at the rest of the poll and see where the Big 12 falls out in this year's first ranking. Top five, there's a lot of Big 12 flavor right there. Texas, number 2, Oklahoma, number 3, kind of where people expected them to start the season. USC and Alabama round out the top 5. Second set, Ohio State, Virginia Tech, who Nebraska's got to play early on in the year. LSU and the Ole Miss team that beat Texas Tech in the Cotton Bowl. 11 through 15, Oklahoma State. Just out of the top 10, most people think they are a top 10 team this season. California, Georgia, Oregon, and Georgia Tech round out the top 15. 16 through 20, Boise State, TCU, Utah, Florida State, North Carolina, and Butch Davis. 21 through 25, we see the Nebraska Cornhuskers in there at number 22. Notre Dame, BYU, and Oregon State round out the top 25. As for the rest of the Big 12, Kansas and Texas Tech just outside the top 25 at 26 and 28. A little surprise there. I thought Kansas would be in the top 25. I could easily switch them out for Notre Dame, who's coming off an unimpressive 7-6 campaign from last year. Also receiving votes, Missouri. Colorado got 2 votes as well. Okay, right now we're going to switch our attention to some Big 12 predictions. I'm going to predict my order of finish in the North and South divisions. We're going to start first with the Big 12 North. And here we go. Number 1, the Kansas Jayhawks. I ultimately think KU has a better package right now than Nebraska. I'm going to give them a nod in the North with a 9-3 record over Nebraska. It comes down to one game, the game in Lawrence against Nebraska. I think KU gets that. Right now, the main reason I give the Jayhawks the edge, they have a better offense and a proven quarterback. Nebraska does have an extremely stout defense, but with an unproven quarterback, I have to go off of what I think right now, and that's the Kansas Jayhawks with their offensive unit. I'm going to give them the nod over Nebraska. Rounding out the North, the Missouri Tigers, Colorado Buffaloes, Kansas State Wildcats, and Iowa State Cyclones. Let's take a look at the losses that I think Kansas is going to go through this year. Oklahoma at home, a tough game. I just don't see that right now. At Texas Tech, a game at the end of October. That's a tough place to come play for KU and a good place to get tripped up on the schedule. I think Texas Tech wins that one. And then at Texas, obviously, that's a tall order to ask Kansas to go in there and beat them in Austin. There's where I see their 3 losses. As for Nebraska, here's the losses. I got them on a non-conference. I think that's a tough game to go to Blacksburg and play Virginia Tech. I think they'll lose there. Conference losses, and this one might be surprising to people. Texas Tech and Lincoln. I just think Texas Tech has a dynamic that causes Nebraska trouble. And I think by that time, Taylor Potts and the offense are going to mature just a little bit. I think they go into Lincoln and upset Nebraska. That could be a key game right there in the Big 12 standings because that's the game that drops them to the 4-loss mark. Oklahoma at home. OU doesn't play well in Lincoln, but I think they have enough talent to get it done this year. And then at Kansas, like I pointed out earlier, I think that's the Big 12 North title game. And right now, offensively, I give the nod to KU. Okay, now I'm going to look at the Big 12 South. Last year, we had a lot of fun in this division. 3 teams tied as co-champions of the Big 12 South Conference. BCS standings were implemented, sending Oklahoma eventually to the Big 12 title game and to the national championship game. So I thought, why not? Round 2, let's have some more fun. Here's my predicted order of finish in the Big 12 South. Yep, there you go. A 3-way tie again is what I predict. I mapped out all these games, looked at it as a game-by-game analysis, and this is honestly how the schedule came out. When I got done, I looked at it and I said, holy cow, I've got a 3-way tie, but I think that's really how it's going to work out. All right, here's how I see the tie working out in the South. Oklahoma, they get revenge over Texas and Dallas in the Red River rivalry and beat the Longhorns. Then Texas beats Oklahoma State to give the Cowboys their first loss. Then Oklahoma in the driver's seat goes to the last game of the year at home against Oklahoma State, and I think Mike Gundy and the Cowboys go to Norman and they beat them. During Les Miles and Mike Gundy's tenure at Oklahoma State, they've had no problem going to Norman and not only being competitive, but winning football games, and I think they get it done here, sends the Big 12 into a little bit of a tailspin and a 3-way tie in the South. So then we end up with 3 teams tied, and after last year, you know exactly how that works. We go to the BCS standings. I'm going to go out on a limb here and project at that point, since Texas incurred their loss at the earliest point in the season against Oklahoma and Dallas. They're going to be the highest in the BCS rankings. They'll get the nod to go to the Big 12 championship game. So after we work out the tie at the top of the division, the rest of the South, Texas Tech at number 4, 9-3. This may be a little bit of lofty expectations on Texas Tech if you really want to consider the fact that they lost some offensive linemen, some defenders, Graham Harrell, Michael Crabtree, but I think they have a lot of talent behind it, and Leach has proven during his tenure at Texas Tech he doesn't really rebuild, he just reloads. These are the 3 losses I project for Tech. At Texas, that's a tall order in Austin on September 19th, that early in the year. At Oklahoma State and Stillwater, I think an extremely difficult game, and I do have a high opinion on Oklahoma State this season. Then Oklahoma comes to Lubbock. I think they get it done there. The fence games. These 4 games, I really had a difficult time projecting at this point in the season. At Houston, I've spoken earlier in previews that I'm impressed with Houston. They're a favorite in Conference USA. They can cause a lot of trouble. I saw a couple of preseason magazines predict Houston to actually beat Texas Tech, but I think ultimately the experience and the difference in conference caliber gets Texas Tech the win at Houston. At Nebraska, that's a tough thing to say. Texas Tech goes to Lincoln and beats the Big 12 North favorite, but I think right now, more stability on offense, it makes me very apprehensive to pick Nebraska over Tech at that point. KU in Lubbock, I talked about it earlier, but I think that's a good tripping place for Kansas, and I think Texas Tech gets it done there. And then I think the last game of the year is going to be a very exciting one. Baylor in Dallas, Robert Griffin and that team have progressed, and I think by that point, we're going to know a lot more about Baylor. Could be one of the more entertaining games of the year, but I think Texas Tech will get it done in Dallas. Rest of the South, Baylor Bears, 7-5. I had confidence in putting them at 7-5. I debated a couple other games, but I think Art Briles and the Bears, they get bowl eligible this year, and I think they end up with a winning season. And at the bottom of the rung, Texas A&M at 3-9. Nothing against them personally. It's just the rest of the South is so stout, I couldn't give them wins over interdivision opponents. 3-9, they might end up a little bit better than that, but I think ultimately they just don't have the right mix this year. Next year, I think they'll be better, but this year, 3-9 is about as much as I can put them there. Okay, that's going to do it for my projections on the Big 12 Conference. That's also going to wrap up this edition of the Red Raider Report. Be sure and check back tomorrow. We're going to have a report from Texas Tech's first day of practice finally as we see the Red Raiders for the first time. For the Red Raider Report, I'm Zach Long.